I am Dracula. I bid you welcome.
Oh, it's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Thou shalt rise again.
Power to make multitudes run squealing in terror at the touch of my little invisible finger.
Do you believe in werewolves? To a new world of gods and monsters.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Ken and I's Retrospective of the Universal Horror Classics. Ken, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. What are we talking about this evening?
We are talking about, I believe, what is this, the fourth installment in the Mummy series, the third in the Kara series, The Mummy's Ghost.
Yeah. Okay, so we talked about this off air. I'll say what my biggest issue with this film is. This film has some great ideas. They just don't do anything with them.
It's very true. And I'll tackle a lot of those, but I'll first off by saying I watched this movie about 3 nights ago, and and sort of as a little mini refresher in that time, I watched a certain someone's review of this movie. Can you take a guess who? Who are we? Who have we been riding the coattails of this entire?
Mr. James Rolfe. And I almost feel like, and I didn't watch it recently, but I feel like he talked this movie up.
The thing he pointed out when he was reviewing this one specifically that I want to say, and I agree with him, a lot of it feels like the plot doesn't really have a direction, and neither does the Mummy. It's just sort of meandering about a little bit until he decides he's just going to pick up the girl and okay, we're going to remind her that she's the Mummy princess.
It's just, I'm not, out of, as weird as this is going to sound, out of all of the characters, out of every movie we've reviewed so far, this is probably the one I feel the most bad for.
Yeah, and we'll get to the ending. But I want to tackle something you said there about some good ideas that they just didn't really fulfill all the way. One thing, I kind of like the idea of this being one of the early things to depict like young college students as the heroes. But they didn't really do that.
No, because the boyfriend is beyond forgettable.
Yeah, he's not really much of anything on this one. I can't even remember his name. Actually, let me pull up the IMDb for this movie.
Harvey.
Okay. Now, a few things that I did like about this one. I really liked how, I'm not sure if you noticed this. Sorry, pulling up the IMDb here. I'm not sure if you noticed the girl, let's see, her name, Ramsey Ames, who played Amina. She, I'm not sure if you noticed, she started off with like all black hair, and like sort of throughout the movie, she has like a white streak. It gets bigger, and then by the end of when she's getting carried off by the mummy, she's got full white hair. I liked that little touch. It was subtle, and it didn't really call attention to it.
And see, that's exactly where my biggest issue with this film comes in, and this is what we said last episode about like taking some of these lesser known sequels and adapting them. That could make her story could make a whole movie revolving around her and not understanding what's going on, maybe discovering her past. Yep. If you still want to be tragic and horrifying like the end of this film, I guess have at it. Mm-hmm. But it's just like, I get what they were going for, but I did feel bad for her, but it's like this, like what happened to her, if that was adapted and retold by a much better writer, I could see that becoming like one of my favorite movies, because it's like what she was going through was barely explained. It was barely touched on. It just happened. She just, and Princess Ananka was still in her coffin. She didn't disappear till later, and then suddenly, boom, it's like, yeah, but she's already been possessed by this whole mummy thing when Ananka was still in her bandages.
That's a good point That's a good point of, like, it's like there's a lot of cool ideas, but they just didn't seem to think it all out all the way, because like specifically that whole deal where Karis and the Egyptian priest, played by John Carradine, back again, baby. When they sort of go to the exhibit and Karis reaches in for her, I kind of liked the scene where he reaches in for her and then it cuts to her screaming in bed and then it cuts back and the mummy's just gone. I like that he's like reaching for that body and the girl is aware of it, but they just didn't explore that idea.
Like, that's at least something that it's like the Mummy remake trilogy, where it's like, I did like how they did that back in the past to explain it. Whereas this was just, it just happens. Why?
Right.
Why?
Yeah.
And what of Ananka went into Amina or soul? Okay, where did the body go? Why did Ananka have this? It's just so much of like, and I get a lot of these old movies were just, they didn't care. They were just like, oh, put it out. People will want to watch it. But it's like, but you have such a good, you have such a good setup. You just got lazy with the execution, unfortunately.
I know. And like, we're talking a lot about the negatives here. I don't hate this movie. I don't I don't hate it, and really, I wouldn't even say I hate any of these movies. I didn't hate The Invisible Man Returns, and I almost hated Son of Dracula, but not quite. So I don't hate any of these, but I do even like this one better than those movies. I enjoy that. I don't know, that you still get some creepy images of him stalking around at night, and Chad knows there's a moment that I found very amusing. I sent him a clip. There's a part where Karis is just approaching a wooden fence, and I guess he's just totally unaware of his space around him because he doesn't try walking around it. He just hits this fence and is just like pushing past it. And I actually took a video of this and I sent it to him, and it's just, I just sort of added the sound effects of him pushing through it, and I'm just adding like, meh, get out of here. But so there's a little moments like that we can laugh at, and there's some cool, creepy moments. Overall, it is weaker than The Mummy's Tomb and even The Mummy's Hand, I'd say.
What did you think of how Karis looked?
I feel like they got a little lazy.
They were hanging off of him a lot more in this film.
I thought I didn't really notice that as much. It looked like his mummy makeup on his face looked a little lazier, like it was almost just a mask and they just put some plaster over it.
Well, we still gotta wonder, where'd he come from?
Yes, it doesn't explain
the last movie. And in this
one, doesn't
no, that's what I was wondering at the beginning when the priest was talking to Yusuf Bey, and he's like, oh, go to America, summon Karis or something. And he just does it, and Karis comes walking out of some trees. I was like, did I miss a scene? I'm like, turned up in a house fire in the last movie. Where is he coming from?
All you would have had to show is maybe he like crawled into the basement or something and see him like climbing out from the rubble. That's all you would have needed.
His hand reach out from the ground because he's already the undead or something. But it's like, but no, it's just he walks out of the trees. I'm like, what?
Yeah. So has he just been walking around this whole time?
Right. And they're still like in New England, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah. For some reason, I thought they were in the bayou in the last one. I guess I might have been wrong.
But it's like in this one, I could have swore they said New England.
No, yeah, they did. They said it was like New England in this one.
New England. I didn't know New England had swamps in
it. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe
back in the 40s it did.
Maybe. But unless we have other things we want to tackle before this, do you want to go ahead and talk about, for me, as many problems as this movie might have, the ending makes up for it for me.
The ending was so depressing and haunting. He's like reaching for his girlfriend and like screaming for her, and then he like, Karis like lets her like turn around and she's a corpse. I'm like, that's horrible. Yeah. That poor girl.
She starts like decaying and like becoming like old and like wrinkly and she's like looking like a mummy, and Karis is carrying her off into the swamp, and they're both buried in the swamp together, and that's how it ends.
I was,
No,
what?
the hero doesn't doesn't beat away the mummy and save her, and they like hug it out at the end. No, he takes her decaying body into the swamp with him. Bold move for the time, I'd say.
Bold move and depressing. Like I felt legitimately sad when that happened. I'm like, this poor girl, she did nothing wrong this whole film, and that's her fate. Like I know in every horror film there's characters that die, but it's like, especially when you see the ones where you feel especially bad for her, like this, it's like, what did she do to deserve this awful fate?
And a lot of horror movies now, like I feel like the 70s, well, maybe even the 60s is where it sort of started, but you see a lot more nowadays, like horror movies with bummer endings that aren't, I feel like it's rare nowadays to see a horror movie with like a legitimately happy ending. It's like, no, these people at best are going to be like traumatized the rest of their lives. At worst are dead or possessed forever. Back then, yeah, you beat the monster and you hug it out over the end and it's a happy ending. This one didn't do that back then.
No, this one just said, yeah, we don't like Amina. We're going to turn her into a non-con.
Now let me
The last line of the movie is going to be her boyfriend screaming for her and crying.
let me let me say this. When we were recording the last episode, I told you, hey, remind me to say something, but I remember to bring this up. You were talking about how they should like remake or take things from these movies that are lesser known rather than just the originals. The Hammer mummy movie actually does have the mummy carrying the reincarnation of his mummy bride into the swamp. So they took a little something from this one.
Okay. Did she make it in that one, or did she die in that one?
Oh, it's been so long, I can't remember.
Okay. But see, that's where it also comes, like what I was saying back at the
I
beginning.
think she dies.
Oh, lovely. And that goes back to what I said at the beginning. Why? There's no explanation for why Ananka possesses Amina. None. She's Egyptian. She's Egyptian. If that's your only explanation, that is so shallow, in my opinion.
The only thing I can say is, well, yeah, I don't know, because in the original Mummy movie with Boris Karloff as Imhotep, they have like some explanations for like why this woman is Ankhsenamen. But yeah, it's like,
But
it's
that
also
at least
crazy.
dove into it. That story was so much deeper than this one. That had so much.
Yeah,
Obviously written by better writers than this one was.
yeah. Well, and also I have to point out a little thing that sort of doesn't make sense is, wasn't a woman in the mummy's tomb supposedly the reincarnation of Ananka?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay, and Ananka is now possessing this woman, even though I'm guessing that woman is still alive. The only thing I can guess
No,
is,
she'd be an old woman, remember?
oh, that's right, because that
The
was
whole
30 years
generation
ago.
was killed off in the last film.
True, true. So, okay, maybe, but if nothing else, I guess you could say maybe they were wrong about that one, but this one really is Ananka. Also, I gotta say, this movie is just doing the same thing that The Mummy's Hand and The Mummy's Tomb did, where Karis is getting the mummy princess or the reincarnation of her, and then what happens? The priest in charge of him falls in love with her and wants her for himself.
I mean, I give him credit. Amina was a beautiful girl.
Yeah, very, very lovely.
I just love how it's so funny watching movies like this where they just like treat the female like she's just a prize. He's like, I'm just gonna take her back to Egypt. It's like, yeah,
Yeah,
she's gonna say no.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
I enjoyed Carradina's Yusuf Bey. Um, I think I like the last guy better though. The last
Yeah,
police that came to America.
yeah. Actor Turin Bey,
Yep,
right? Yeah,
he was the one who was like killed by the mob, right?
yes.
Yeah, I like that movie better than this one.
Oh
But
yeah, The Mummy's Tomb is probably my favorite still of the Karras movies so
yeah,
far.
this one, just
And,
like I said, if this one was either remade or they'd added a lot more lore into this, I could have seen
mhm.
this being my favorite one, especially with the tragic ending. But
Yeah, the tragic.
because they left out the lore, that's what hurts it.
Well, the tragic ending, and also, like we said, a lot of different ideas they could have played around with. Like, you made a good suggestion. If they really focused on her noticing her hair is turning white and just all these little things that aren't adding up, and she's really confused about it, that could have been interesting.
They didn't say anything about her hair the whole movie, did they?
No, I don't think anyone even acknowledged it.
You have this badass white streak in your hair. Nobody cares.
Yeah, which is something I've always like loved in women is like the rogue look.
I was gonna say, so you've always had a crush on Rogue, huh?
Yep, yep. Well, also I've always found Anna Paquin cute, so.
Nice.
But
She was a
anyways,
badass, actually. Speaking of Rogue, real quick, did you see the Rogue cut of Days of Future Past?
I did not.
You need to.
Okay.
She actually plays a big part in the second half of the movie because she wasn't even
Okay.
in the theatrical cut of Days of Future Past.
Right. Right.
If you ever get a chance, watch the Rogue cut. I don't really like the theatrical cut that much, but it's like the Rogue cut. I think adds quite a bit of stuff to the future.
Okay. Cool. Cool.
But back to this. Yeah, it's just I don't know. Like you
I'll say
said,
this. I still think The Mummy's Tomb is my favorite, and I think it will remain my favorite. And my reason for that is The Mummy's Curse came out the same year as The Mummy's Ghost. So they didn't even take a year in between for that one.
and that's the last one, right?
It's the last of the Mummy movies. Last of the Karras ones. Then you got Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy.
Can't wait till we get to those. We just start.
I'm excited. I think you've told me before you're not big into the Abbott and Costellos.
They've never. I don't know. I've always just kind of viewed it as like once you take what's supposed to be scary and just add pure comedy to it, like you're kind of diminishing the meaning behind it.
Right.
Like imagine if they did that to like Aliens and Predators. It'd be just weird. Like how am I supposed to? Like I'm not gonna say like I'm not after watching them. I'm not gonna like look at Frankenstein and Dracula the originals and be like, oh yeah, they don't mean anything anymore. But it's just kind of like I don't know. But it's almost like in the '80s when like Freddy Krueger toys were coming out and Jason appeared on like late night talk shows. It's like, oh yeah. I mean, am I supposed to be scared of this still?
I was just thinking, like, what if they took like a modern comedic duo? Like, what if they did Key and Peele meet Jason Voorhees?
Only if he killed them in the first 2 minutes. But if they're gonna do it like Abbott and Costello, no, they're gonna survive the whole film, and Jason's gonna slip on a banana peel and accidentally impale himself on his own machete.
You know what's so funny is I remember a while back, I may have shared this in the movie group we're in on Facebook, or maybe just on my personal timeline. They had like it was the Universal Monsters page on Facebook had they did the whole choose 3 to protect you, the rest will try to kill you, one of those things. And your options were, of course, Dracula, the monster, the mummy, the wolf man, creature from the Black Lagoon, from the Opera, Invisible Man, and one of the options was Abbott and Costello. And honestly, I said, you know what? I think I'm just going to go with Abbott and Costello and no one else because they've survived every encounter they've had with monsters.
Every single they've survived all of them. The mummy, Invisible Man, Dracula, the monster.
So they're all I need. I'll just do what they do and I'll survive.
You know, I haven't looked at the list. I forget. Did they encounter the creature, or was the creature only in his 3 movies and that was it?
He was only in his 3 theatrical movies, but my understanding is they had like a comedy short on TV where they did meet the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Oh, that's a shame. Even though I'm not gonna lie, the creature did get another badass appearance in Monster Squad.
Yes,
he looked
absolutely.
Badass in that movie, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
That was a damn good design they came up with.
Yep. Let's see here. Is there anything else we want to say about the Mummy's Ghost? I was just gonna say, I don't really get the title of the Mummy's Ghost. Kind of like the Mummy's Tomb. He's not a ghost. It's just the mummy.
If he was a ghost, he wouldn't be able. I mean, maybe they were talking about Princess Ananka.
Maybe that's all I can imagine. And
I don't know.
I
feel like you were right. This is just the era where it's a grab bag of cool words to throw into.
Son of Dracula.
Even though it wasn't his son, it was Dracula.
Yeah, exactly. The Mummy's Tomb. We're not at his tomb.
The Mummy's Hand, which only meant something for like one scene in the entire movie, which that should have been called The Mummy's Tomb.
Mm-hmm. One other scene in The Mummy's Ghost that I want to give a cool shout out to that I kind of liked was when Yusuf Bey and Karis are, in the tomb, or not in the tomb, in the museum, and Karis starts like throwing stuff all around, and that like old security guard is just like, "Hey, what's going on?" And he's like pointing the gun at Bey, and Karis is just like sneaking up behind him.
He like pushes him through the door and it breaks.
Mm-hmm. That's
And
just
every person who died in this movie, he's got the same mold around his throat. It must be
right.
funny. I'm like, you don't think there's maybe a copycat killer out there doing it to throw you idiots off?
Right.
Every person who dies, there's mold. It's the mummy. He's back. I was like, worst police work I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm. So this might be the weakest of the Mummy movies so far, but I would still recommend it. I think the Mummy movies are worth, binging through, and it's an hour long. What do you have to lose?
Exactly. Yeah, no, I agree. It's weak, but it's almost kind of like, to me, it's almost like the Star Wars prequels, where I look at this, and I'm like, oh, you could have been so much better with just a little bit of work, a little bit.
There's still enough cool stuff.
You had such good ideas, but you just fumbled so much. They could have been way better than they were, but it's like
it's like you fumbled so much, but the cool ideas are still cool enough that I still want to see them in some light.
Yeah, and if anybody out there wants to watch a movie with a downer ending to put you in a depressive mood, throw this on, because you'll feel absolutely depressed when you see what happens to this poor girl who didn't deserve this.
The ultimate example in the Universal Monsters, I think, so far, of a downer ending.
Absolutely. So this one takes the crown for downer ending, at least.
Yep. All right. Well, I've got nothing left on this one.
Me neither. Check it out if you haven't seen it.
Exactly. It's a fun one. It's worth your time. We pointed out a lot of problems, but you know what? It's still got that classic monster vibe goodness.
I'd still rather watch this over something like James Cameron's Avatar.
Agreed. It's a third of the time, and you know what? I would rather watch I feel like I could watch all the Karis Mummy movies instead, and you know what? It's a better use of my time.
I would too. That's actually a good point. Oh,
and it'll be about the same amount of time
it really will, especially if you just binge all of them at once.
Exactly.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Next week, we're back with, honestly, not next week, 2 weeks from now, we'll be back with one of my personal favorites of this entire box set.
And I'm a big fan of it, too. I'm looking forward to talking about that one.
Same. So, guys, we will see you in 2 weeks for House of Frankenstein.
All right. Take it easy, everyone.